So welcome to the podcast trip from Barrell, Chief Whiskey Scientist. Heck of a title.
I wish I had that one. Yeah. Instead, Will just calls me an idiot.
That's where, I mean, there's quite a chasm between Chief Whiskey Scientist and you. Yeah. So, yeah. But tell us a little bit about what that even means, because that's not a term that we're used to necessarily hearing, you know, on the masthead of a distillery, Chief Whiskey Scientist. We know there are scientists, but what does that mean for you at Barrell?
Well, it's kind of funny. We start there because I think back to my high school days, and I kind of wanted to get mad at my guidance counselor because this was nowhere on the list in any shape or in any way. I mean, there was no listing, no nothing. So kind of looked out my career path, but Chief Whiskey Scientist to me is it's the science of all things that make the product what it is. So we can talk about a master distiller, we can talk about a master blender, or we can just talk about the sciences that go into making whiskey. And so looking at it from a broad stroke, it's understanding all of the things that happen upstream in the distillery world, but also understanding how things go together in the blending world to make the innovative products that we make.
I love it. Now, Barrell obviously is a name now that, I mean, if you look at the grand scheme of whiskey brands, you know, it's not hundreds of years old like some are, but within this current marketplace, Barrell has been there since even before kind of the real peak of the bourbon boom, as people want to call it. But one thing that I love about Barrell is how it's continually evolving. You know, each product is going to be high quality. It's going to be delicious, but you're not going to taste it and say, yeah, I already have a bottle of this. Each time it's different. What in your process sticks out to you? What makes Barrell such an innovative brand?
And sure, before you do that really quick, I just wanted to say, like, Barrell, like, was, I mean, it wasn't a pioneer, but like when we first got into whiskey about 10 years ago, Barrell was like doing those different finishes. They were doing these crazy blends. And so like, and then the industry just happened to shift towards that. We're going to get into it later that these guys are in front of the curve. We're going to get to that in a minute. I'm excited to hear from you on that trip, but yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah. What does all that look like with Barrell and the expressions you guys are doing and what Will said?
You know, it's funny. It's been a long road, starting the company with Joe. I guess it's been, 13 years now. And so in that time frame, sort of the environment was this craft distillery movement. And there were a lot of people who wanted to be in this industry. And the understanding at the time was that to be in the distilling industry, that you needed a distillery. And so there was this massive push to find people who understood distillation and find people who knew how to build them and build the plant. And, you know, that was the entryway for a lot of people. And so prior to meeting Joe, I was, spent some years in corporate America and also owning a consulting company. Part of my message was that you didn't necessarily have to have the distillery to be in the business. And, we look at the business now and that's commonplace. Everybody knows that. But 12 years ago, it was such a foreign concept to say, you don't need the factory to have the finished product. And so explaining that to people and saying that, building the brand is a great place to start to, one, see if you really want to be in this business. You can be in it with a lot less overhead. You're going to get a quicker return on your ROI, and, so on and so forth. And so when I met Joe, he had already done some homework and realized that he didn't need the factory. So we were, when we first started talking about this, we were pretty well aligned on, where ground zero was with a brand and what we were going to do to grow that brand. And in that process, if the brand got to a point where it needed a distillery, then, hey, you know what, we can build a distillery too. But we weren't going to put the cart before the horse necessarily in that equation from our perspective. But by doing that, we had to be able to explain the position of the company. So we had to be able to say that we don't necessarily need the distillery, that there is a commodities market of finished barrels, and that with proper licenses and relationships, anybody can go source these barrels and create a brand and put unique blends together. And so this was messaging. And let me tell you, this was literally an uphill climb, because we had people telling us that it was illegal. We were going to go to jail. We couldn't do this stuff because we didn't distill it. I mean, you name it, we've had that conversation.
Big whiskey
in real
lobbyists
time.
got involved, is what you're telling me.
I'm telling you, these are real world conversations that we had, and we take all that stuff for granted now. So as Joe and I are talking about, what to do with this brand and the trajectory in the early years, it was always 100% focused on what was in the bottle. So the consumer experience, right? We couldn't necessarily control what was upstream, but with my background and between the two of us, we were going to be able to figure out the product, the barrels that we wanted based on what was in the barrel, and then create an innovative way to introduce different barrels together to create flavor complex blends that did not exist on their own at that time. And so that's really where we started. And we'll talk through, like with the batch that we're going to taste tonight. That's sort of our flagship here, and we'll talk through some of that. But the innovation has continued to grow and become more and more complex, and more creativity is coming out of not just Barrell, but also the industry as a whole. And I think you're going to continue to see the industry drive further.
That's a great point, Tripp. We need to get to some whiskey real quick.
That's what I was going to say.
So
I like what you're saying. You mentioned something.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to start pouring up. This is actually batch 37.
There was a salivation situation.
And there was Pavlov's dog over there when you started talking about that we're going to drink
That's
tonight.
the nicest thing you've said to me.
So
I will take Pavlov's dog.
But this is batch 37, and that's one thing that has been, as you said, the flagship has been the batches, and they're numbered, and the number's more prominent now than it was in the early bottles where it was just written on the label what batch number. But and I think this goes to that conversation. I want you to tell us about this whiskey, but you also mentioned all those conversations. You guys decided to do something at a time when I would say whiskey excitement and curiosity was high, but whiskey knowledge was probably low within the marketplace. And the fact that you were blending could have carried with it a negative connotation. People think of blended whiskey that was swill, right, that was not a favorable product from generations ago.
I mean, I'd drink it.
But this was going and getting a blend wasn't really in the lexicon when you started doing it. Now it's pretty ubiquitous. There's tons of people that have special batches or special blends, but you were either this is our product or we're a non-distiller producer that's just slapping a label on our product. This was really kind of the third way that wasn't done that much at that time. So in light of all that, tell us a little bit about batch 37 as well as that entire leap forward on blending when it wasn't really cool to do.
Yeah. So again, back to what I was saying earlier, that everything we do is 100% focused on the product, what's in the bottle, the consumer experience with the product that we've created. And upstream from where we decide what barrels we use, there are a lot of decisions that are made. So somebody's picking a yeast strain, somebody's picking a grain bill. You're going to mill that grain a certain way with a certain piece of equipment. Fermentation temperatures, distillation variability, maturation variability. I mean, there's thousands of things that have to be done upstream before we get a sample from a barrel that we have to decide on. And so we're very well aware of all of those things and the difficulties in doing that. But from a distillery with a single yeast strain and a grain bill, that goal is to create the best thing you can create every single time. And that is a massive undertaking in and of itself. But from my opinion, it's going to limit a little bit of what you can get from a flavor perspective. So if you use multiple yeast strains and do multiple grain bills, you're going to begin to build more complexity, not necessarily all at once, but as you're using these different tools separately, you can build complexity. All we're doing is we're choosing the barrels following maturation based on all of these decisions made upstream so that we can introduce those products together to create that complexity and that flavor experience. So the batch originally, we started with batch bourbon, batch number 1. The idea was that the batches were going to be cask-strength, limited release. Once we sell through it,
that's my biggest beef, Trip. That's my biggest beef. I'm upset. This is one and done, and I'm upset because I've already tried it.
Well, and I'll tell you, part of this is that when you guys taste our products, no matter what it is, the ultimate inconsistency that you will get in our products is quality. So maybe you don't get the same batch every time, and maybe you have a favorite. Well, we're all going to have a favorite at some point in this game, but we want you to believe that the next batch you pick up or the next product that you pick up that we've created is worth being in the bottle and that you're going to enjoy it.
So this batch 37, because we're tasting on it.
Yeah,
we're looking at 111.38 proof. We've got a blend of straight bourbon whiskeys: Kentucky 10-year, Indiana 8, 11, and 12-year, Tennessee 13, 14, and 15-year. Tell us a little bit about this batch and what makes it special.
So, we've blended many different types of whiskeys into these batches. Some were fewer barrels, some were more more barrels, and then more complex barrels. This one, the minimum age being 8 and the maximum age being 18, and a whole lot of ages in between. What we're really trying to focus on there is sort of the sweet spot for the bourbon drinker. So in that 8 to 12 year range, a lot of people will talk about is the sweet spot for them. I like that 8 to 10, 8 to 12, and that's going to be your sweet spot for your typical characteristics of bourbon, we'll say.
Yeah, and sorry, just to pipe in right there when you were talking about the different ages and stuff, like what a lot of people need to understand is like the art of this, right? Like some people are like, oh no, like the older stuff's better, like, the complexity and the oiliness and all this other stuff. But what you guys are doing is creating a well-balanced product that a lot of people will enjoy. A lot of people don't necessarily enjoy a 20-year-old in an oak barrel whiskey, and so you guys are taking all kinds of different ages, all kinds of different yeast strains, and it is an art to get it to this. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, sir, hell of an artist. Continue.
Thank you. We wanted to take that core representation of bourbon and take it a little bit further because, to your point, some people do like the older stuff. They do like a little more wood in there. Maybe there's a little more tannin. Sometimes there's a little more sweetness depending on the characteristics of the barrel you're using. So we wanted to focus in on these flavors that we can get from some of these older bourbons and layer that in with this traditional representation of bourbon. And so it's all about introducing different flavors, making them work together without covering up anything.
Yeah. No, it's my bloodstream acted like a freaking 4th of July on a beach fireworks show.
I hear that. Well, and that is
started. What do they call action potentials in your brain? With all the flashing and stuff, the electrons and electricians going through it.
Ask the scientist. I don't know.
Yeah, those you know words. What I'm talking about?
I'm with you. I'm picking up.
But once again, I mean, that's what makes it unique, and to me was kind of a gamble at the beginning of it. Is it was something that took explanation to people that weren't used to seeing the creativity and the art of it. They were used to being told, this is your product. It is a whiskey, whether it's, straight bourbon whiskey that has a meaning to it, or bottled in bond. There were things that were known, but this was such a different take on crafting it that is remarkable. And now we're 37 batches in just to the flagship line. Is there a consistent release schedule of how many you do a year, or is it when we get our lots and we craft it and then it's ready to go, we do it?
So right now we're doing two releases a year. That's about right for the balance in the markets. We've done more in the past, and it sort of feels like when we do more, it's a little overwhelming, maybe a little bit too much saturation with the batches. So 2 batches a year seems about right for the release schedule and the volumes that we're doing. So, I mean, we'll see how things go, but I think that's probably what's best for right now.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like that.
So
you have any more questions on 37, or are we going to move to another drink?
No, there's so many characteristics about this that is so in the pocket of a really great bourbon that I'm experiencing. The nose is great. Palate is complex. I'm getting a little bit of the oiliness in there, which is one of the mouthfeels that I enjoy is a lot of oil.
Well, as well as, I mean, we're now looking at, we've got Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee. Has, obviously, as the brand has grown, has the access to different runs of barrels, different distillers you could contract through or you could get lots of, has that expanded for you over time? Or do you kind of still stick with kind of the original core that you started with? What does that kind of look like as whiskey's expanded and production has expanded with people?
Yeah, I think that there's always really been a lot of whiskey on the market. It's just understanding that it's there and figuring out how to get access to it. So we've had some really good relationships in this business and have had access to a lot of these bourbons. But yeah, I mean, as people have built distilleries and decided to innovate in the production side of things with yeast strains and grains and barrel types and so on and so forth, that has absolutely created a whole nother palette of products that can be utilized for blending, even on their own, but certainly in blending.
I like it.
It's got a creamy nose to it, and I don't know how to describe that other than like it.
You just described it. You said creamy nose. Those
are
descriptive terms. What you just did there was describe something.
Yeah, but it don't make no sense.
Well, most of what you say doesn't. So, should we move as we move on though? Yeah. Should we go with the Armagnac or should we go with the foundation?
We should probably do the foundation first and finish up with Armagnac.
That was a test, by the way.
Typically, I finish my day up with Armagnac.
See if your scientific skills were up to mine, because obviously something that's finished is going to introduce some new flavors to your palate that you may not want if you're trying to try something, fresh. I don't know.
But are you after the job? Is that what's going on here?
I'm always after someone named whiskey scientist. Yeah, that's kind of the dream, right?
Yeah, that's the title you want, Trip. hey, Trip, tell us about like some mistakes and stuff. Like, like when you were growing and blending and stuff, I'm assuming that you guys, were trying some things and you were like, oh gosh, that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's so I have a different perspective on the way we approach these things, and we get asked periodically about what do we do with the things that don't work, and certain types of mistakes and all these things. But my perspective on putting these things together is that if we're going to classify it as a mistake, or if we don't like something, it's just not done yet. It's just not right. And so as we sort of jump into these projects, we're putting these different whiskeys together. We're creating these products with, there's an element of uncertainty there, and there's quite a bit of chaos in what's going on because we really let the whiskey dictate the direction that we're going. And so if we get to a point where we have a bunch of barrels that we blended together and there's an off note or there's something going on in there, we don't just stop and throw our hands up and say, okay, this is a mistake, we're not going to do it. It's what steps can we go through to identify what's there that we don't like, and can we do something about that? And so there's a list of things we can go through to talk about what we do in those scenarios to try to eliminate those flavors that we don't like And we'll go through all these things in the lab, trying to figure out the best case scenario to move forward and, until we get to a point where we like it. But we won't stop until we get to the answer. And there's been times when, as we're putting these blends together, maybe there's a time constraint with what we're doing and we can't get there in the time constraint. So this project gets set aside, the next project gets moved up in the time frame, and we just move on and go back and work on the other one as we can, and it gets released at a later date. So there's no necessarily wrong answer in these things. It's just continuing to work until we find the right.
Well, and Barrell is a craft operation. You know, it's not, doesn't have the endless budgets as some of the people on the river in Kentucky and things of that nature. But what does what kind of team, like how big is the team that's going into this? And also when you're approaching a batch, is it, you've got a bunch of different projects you're working on at one time, and you start, when one starts to feel right, you dedicate time and maybe move on? Or is it like, we're working on our next batch, let's get some fresh ideas in here, start working on it and see where we go? I'm just kind of curious in that process.
So originally it was just Joe and me deciding what barrels we wanted, and so what the projects were going to be, and getting things in line to move in those directions. Recently we've added, well, I say recently, gosh, time's flown. I think it's been 6 years since we added Nick Christensen. And so the three of us make up the blending team. And so we'll discuss all the different types of products that we want to release in the next year. And we'll begin sort of formulating a plan and a schedule to fit all these different products into the schedule. And after, doing this as long as we have, we've gotten to a point where we're actually able to speak in shorthand about the different whiskeys that we have and the different projects that we have going on. And so there were a lot of things that I started many years ago in anticipation and forethought that a day like today would come when innovation is going to be imperative, that we're going to have to be ahead of the curve at every curve. So we were creating unique barrels, we were sourcing unique whiskeys, we were doing all these things years ago, creating our own spice cabinet for today. So as we're putting these plans together, we can go back through our inventory and say, here's a 10-year-old bourbon that we put in those toasted barrels that we had raised 8 years ago. And let's grab a sample of that, and we'll get a sample of this. And we have a full whiskey library in our facility. And we'll just talk about grain bills, ages, distilleries, and in shorthand, pull together what could potentially be a product. And so as we approach moving forward with that, we're going to start introducing those whiskeys to each other and begin building a foundation.
Well, I mean, you say a spice cabinet you've built. I mean, it almost reminds me of a chef that, sure, if I'm at home and I'm cooking something, I'm looking at a recipe because the techniques, I got to know, saute this or
he's a good
do
cook
this,
too. I've seen it.
But then once it becomes a part of you, kind of second nature, those things that you need to do and what could go together, what flavors you could put together because it's what you do. You're almost a whiskey chef as well as a scientist in the way that using that shorthand and everyone understanding it, you said can be chaotic. I have scenes of like The Bear in my head of the show where it's chaotic, but it comes together because they all know what they're doing and they're working together as one.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's exactly right. It's very comparable to cooking in the fact that, it's sometimes a dash of this or a pinch of that, and that's really the way we think about these things. And I'll tell you, as we're working on these blends, we're working out of Glencairn glasses a lot of times as we're tasting, and we use different volume eyedroppers so that the drops that are added are volumetrically different. And then we'll scale it up so are extremely good with the changes that each individual whiskey can make to that blend.
So this is the Barrell Bourbon Foundation. This is 5 years, blend of straight bourbon whiskeys, comes in at 100 proof. Tell us a little bit about this product.
Yeah, and what's retail on that, or SRP?
For Foundation or 37?
You can tell 37 too. Our people probably want to hear that.
37 on the shelf is line price is $84.99. So it'll vary just a little bit depending on which market you're in.
The 37 was sub 100. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I already loved your beard. Now I love your heart, Trip.
Don't you have to have a beard to be on here?
It would look better. That's for sure, especially shooting in 4K.
So Foundation was a good product, a good project that we worked on, but it was the first product that we had ever blended where we added water. Everything up until that point had all been cask-strength. And so it's again, an interesting perspective of how we created this thing. We look at water as a flavor component the same way we would any other whiskey, because when you include water into the mix, you're going to be changing the chemistry of the whiskey that's in the glass. And so some flavor characteristics are going to disappear and others are going to show up. And so it is as impactful in many ways as the whiskey itself. And so that was our starting point with this. And the idea was, can we take our blending techniques, the way we approach, say, a batch like 37, and approach blending a product that was going to be targeted at 100 proof, with the caveat that the viewpoint of water is going to be another flavor characteristic and not just the element that we use to get the whiskey to a proof point. And so going through that process, the whiskeys that we use to create Foundation are all very different at different proof points. So there was a whole lot of R&D that went into figuring out which flavors we liked and from which distilleries, at which ages, at which proofs, that then led us to the massive puzzle of how to create or how to introduce these different whiskeys and the water, and when to introduce the water to make sure that the final flavor profile was what we were happy with. And the really cool part about this is that I think this drinks more like a cask-strength product, but at 100.
Yeah, man, a ton of flavors still there. I mean,
when I drank it, I thought, like, this is still a dense whiskey. Like, that's the term that came to my mind, is like, there's still density here. It's not cut. It's enhanced.
Yeah,
in a
it's
way
like the
water.
It's like robustness is still there on a cask strength, but yeah, it's just lower proof. Okay, so you've got this around 37's around 90. What's the Foundations?
The Foundation is $55.
Okay, both of these so far is a buy two of them.
Yeah,
and we don't say that often.
Solid. We're only saying it because you're on here.
That's not true. I just wouldn't even bring it up, Trip. That's how I avoid that. Dude, the fact that this is under $100 is in this market is crazy. Thank you. I mean, like, that's all I can say as a whiskey drinker and like somebody that's been around a minute. Like, that's awesome, dude.
Right, now we're gonna move. You go ahead, Trip, but I'm already gonna bust into this Armagnac. So you go.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and I'll, we're not tasting the double oak tonight, but I will tell you that there is a double oak version of Foundation, which takes it another step further.
Same proof?
Same proof, 100 proof, same lots of barrels that we used to create the Foundation, but portions of those barrels were finished in new American toasted oak casks, and then the blend was put together. So we built the complexity another layer out with the toast.
Dude, I don't know how, but this is 5 years old and it's lower proof and it's just as dark as the batch 37.
Well, something you just said there, which I think is curious as well for people, is that it's not that you took a blend and then double oaked the blend. You double
That's
oaked
right.
the components and then blended it to make sure it was still the perfect blend, instead of, all right, we blended it, let it age, see what happens. You knew what components you wanted, double oaked those individually, which is more labor intensive on your part, and then combined it to get that perfect blend. That, I think, shows the extra level of care that goes into even something like that, like, we're going to do it, but we're still going to do it our way, not just the easy way.
Yeah. I mean, there truly is an art to this. I mean, yes, there's science behind it, but there truly is an art, and you have to wear both hats. And we could just blend up some foundation and throw it in a toasted barrel, and I'm sure it'll be a good product. But if we can control all of the maturation metrics of all of the components that we use to make the product, can we get more control? Can we make a better product if we measure more things and control more things? And I think the answer
that was
is
my
yes.
segue, talking about the color of these two, because like, how dark is the double oaked product? Is it darker, or is it just the same? You just know how to make it cool color?
It's probably a hair darker than that, just the nature of the new barrels.
Man, the great color, dude.
So now we're moving on to the third product y'all sent us, which, thank you very much, by the way, for sending us these to drink along with, because a conversation's always a little bit more interesting when there's some liquid courage on it, because we're not good interviewers, but we're good drinkers.
Yeah, we have to get a little loose for interviews. Like, I told your publicist Aaron, I was like, listen, like, we don't normally do this, but we will right now.
But this is a 7-year blend of straight bourbon whiskeys finished in Armagnac cask. It's 113 proof. And one thing that I feel like Barrell has really shown with as well are some of the very unique finished products. Finishing became very popular. A lot of people were doing it. A lot of people were just throwing it in a used barrel and calling it a day. But whether it's seagrass, which was just, the rage and still a daily, always have a bottle on your shelf, to Dovetail, which is unbelievably good.
Seagrass.
Yeah, I said seagrass. That's what I said. You always have a bottle on your shelf. You should keep. This is why we're not good at interviewing.
Yeah, I got one right here.
But it's something that Barrell, beyond blending, has really honed in and perfected that finishing process, where the finish elevates the spirit more than just masks imperfections, which is what I feel like a lot of companies, they use younger whiskey, finish it, try to mask some of that imperfection. Talk a little bit about what kind of the philosophy is, why you do this, why you do things like seagrass, which aren't just straightforward as far as finishing goes, and also in light of this Armagnac finish.
But you nailed it with the explanation. I mean, it is literally about it is literally about adding another dimension to the product. And this was part of the uphill battle, many years ago, where, it's like people wanted to believe that there was some other reason why we were using a finishing cask. So what they would ask, what kind of whiskey are you using? Why do you need this other cask? And really, again, it's about perspective. And so if you're focused in on the product itself and the experience from the product based on, taste, mouthfeel, palate finish, all those great things, then the question to us was, can we take other unique flavors that we can find in other types of casks and work those into these blends, so that it further accentuates the bourbons or the whiskeys instead of trying to cover something up. And again, when originally we started doing this, that was a foreign concept. People didn't want to believe that we were really focused on building complexity in the product. It was more about, what are we trying to hide? And we have been so transparent, to the point where we've gotten into arguments with the TTB because we put too much information on labels. Trying to disclose exactly, what we're putting in the bottle, and then talk about why we're doing it. And so it started with single finishes. And, we work through those more complex finishes where there's as many as 3 in one bottle, but specifically Armagnac, which is a very unique finish, and when done well, adds some really great flavor. And so we've been working with Armagnac for probably 7 years, and we've used it in different rye whiskeys, and then also bourbons in our private release series over the last 6 or 7 years, and hadn't done much with. We hadn't ever released a bourbon, but we knew that it created a good finished profile in a bourbon. So we were actually working on this one for the last few years, and we were going to release it last year, and it wasn't quite where it needed to be. So, part of our previous conversation, we decided that we were going to table the Armagnac, and we were going to move something else into its place and let the Armagnac mature a little bit longer and monitor that maturation to see exactly when we wanted to use it. And so you'll actually get some pretty unique fruit brandy characteristics in this whiskey bourbon that you almost convince yourself are bourbon related, but you go back and you taste it again. It's like, I don't normally get those fruits in bourbon. Not there's really fruit in the bottle.
I mean, this is by far the best Armagnac finish I've ever had. But I mean, Armagnac in and of itself is a great spirit, but it's the liquor that the Kentucky boy falls in love with when he's studying abroad in Paris, right? Like, that's what Armagnac is. It's that girl that he just can't get away from.
See, I use it as a floater.
Well, yeah, it's because you're depraved.
No, it sounds like I'm multiculturally faceted and balanced.
But when I took a sip of this, it's no mistaking. That's a bourbon. You're not mistaking what you're drinking. You are there with a bourbon that is enhanced. It has little something there, and it has a depth. It has other layers that if you want to go there and explore them, you can. But you're drinking a really solid bourbon at the end of the day, and that's what I love about that. It's not overpowering.
One of my favorite things about Armagnac, and I don't know if you guys get this or not, but it's kind of like top of my mouth further back. There's just this tang to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's them grapes.
Yeah, it's like this sparkling grape juice. Like, you know how you pop a Coke?
Yeah.
Coke Zero or something like that, and you hit it, and all of a sudden you're just like, ooh, that's a good one. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
That's why I throw floaters in there.
Yeah. In your Coke. You throw Armagnac floaters in your Coke Zero.
Listen, man, you got it. Sometimes you have to just make it work. Okay?
So, I mean, all of this, I think there's any discussion about innovation, a brand that's been around as long as Barrell has within this. You've built up a great legacy already and recognition for what the brand does. There's no sugarcoating that it is a more trying time when it comes to the bourbon industry. This is more, I feel like, a newer chapter for a brand that has the legs of a history that someone like Barrell does, but not we've been through, the light whiskey era. We've been through the history and figured out a way through it. What is the current constraints and contractions and things as we see that the high of the bourbon boom has crested and we look at the way forward, what does that look like for a brand like Barrell?
Let me say it more clearly for our audience, because I know that they're going to want me to clear that up.
Oh, okay.
How is Barrell going to succeed through this market job?
Well, it's a good question. Clearly, there have been some changes in the market and in the world in the last handful of years. And so there's been a little bit of chaos in all of that. But, luckily, we're pretty comfortable in chaos. And we've been looking out for many years. So this is not a huge surprise in a lot of areas. But I would also say that even though we continue to innovate, we've had a lot of forethought over the years. We have plans for different types of products and unique innovations moving forward that we started working on. But before all this has happened, things that we're working on now and things that we're starting now that will be used in the future. So we're trying to cover all our bases with these things, and all of those things will become components as we create the new products moving forward. But what I'll also say is that with the amount of distilleries that were created and the amount of people who have gotten in this business, the amount of whiskey that is out there, the amount of unique products that are out there are exponential. And so, from my opinion, there's never been a better time to be a blender. There's never been a better time to be creative and innovative, because there's so much stuff out there to use in that process. Yeah. And so, you let your mind be the limit, go find the unique stuff and just create the products.
Well, and I think I want to clarify one thing you said. You said there's never been more unique products. I'd counter that. I'd say there's never been enough as many unique labels. But as far as what's on the shelf, the uniqueness is what's going to shine going forward. And that's why brands like yours that are doing things different, that aren't just buying a run of barrels, slapping their label on it and calling it a day, trying to capitalize. I mean, that's the American dream, right? Is to create something, sell it, and make a profit. But the people that are putting in the work, that are doing it differently, like you just described very well for us here, that's the future, I feel like, for the category. And that's what excites me about even what we've drank here today. I also think you guys may have an upper hand by not having all the overhead of starting the whole operation. That may have been a little providential or whatever those years ago, that you're like, we think we can do this without having to actually manufacture and do all that other process.
Yeah, all very good points. The whole thing about what we do, going back to what I started with, is it's about the liquid in the bottle. And so innovation's great. Being unique is great. Having a cool bottle and a fancy label, all those things are part of the experience. But at the end of the day, you, the consumer, me, the consumer, we're buying the product to drink it. And if you have something that is unique and innovative and there's a great story about it, and you try it and it tastes like crap, are you going to finish it? Are you going to buy it again? Are you going to go back to that company and say, I'm going to give it another chance. I spent $100, but I'm going to try it again? Probably not. I mean, I'm a consumer. I understand. I mean, I that's always playing in the back of my mind, that I'm a consumer. Would I spend my money for this? And so we don't want people disappointed, but so everything we do makes sure that the liquid in that bottle is supposed to be there. And the innovation and the creativity is what helps us do that.
Man, I'm telling you right now, dude, like, I'm still blown away that this is under $100. Like, I mean, if you want to know, I don't know if this is innovation or not, but because of their cost, their overhead stuff, like, it's lower. And I don't know if that plays into the price point at all, but dude, the fact that batch 37 is under $100 and this bad boy is like what, $54.99, the foundation, like, that's nuts. Yeah. What's the Armagnac running us?
It's $84.99. It's line price with the batch.
I love it.
Beautiful.
So, and all three of these are available currently? And I mean, in theory,
they're all on the shelf.
Right, that's
somewhere.
what I mean. Obviously, depending on your market, depending on all that, but these are none of these are forthcoming releases. Folks,
but they're all available. And if you are local, we do have all of them in our gift shop.
So, folks, go check out. I mean, batch 37 was a hitter.
Yeah, I need to talk
that Armagnac was great, and I could drink all three of those and have a starter whiskey collection just with those three different products and look like with the coolest kid on the block. So
yeah, I mean, like, I was just thinking about that. Like, these three put up together, it is a really great flight for somebody, for them to experience your company.
Yep.
Like, it's so cohesive, but yet so different, and I love that.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Trip,
that.
thank you so much for joining us, with sharing this whiskey and really getting deep on both the process, but even the realities of what you do in the marketplace and everything. This was a fascinating conversation, and we appreciate you joining us and hope to have you on again soon.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, guys. I really enjoyed it, and would love to come back and chat bourbon again.
Put out some more bangers like this,
Yeah.
and send them to us, and we'll have you on anytime.
Yeah. Hey, how can people connect with you guys?
So you can find us on all the socials, Barrell Craft Spirits or Barrell Bourbon. Our website is barrelbourbon.com. Barrell Craft Spirits will get you there too. We're on YouTube, Instagram. I think we're actually on TikTok, X. I don't do social media, so I think I've named them all.
That covers it. At
Yeah,
least.
that's your basis for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
for
not, I don't know if you do the alternates, the meme coins of social media.
Sure.
But yeah. Well, Trip, this is blast,
Yeah,
man. Thank you so much. You seem so kind and so educated, and it's really cool to see you in the place that you're thriving, man. It's really cool.
And that's a compliment when he says someone seems educated, because it means like you're not like me.
Yeah.
That's what he means.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it means.
Thank you. I appreciate that, guys. And you should come see us
We'll do it.
sometime if you guys are up in Louisville.
Thanks, Trip.